What's going on, everybody? Dylan Manfre on hand for the Sport Profile. I'm incredibly grateful to be joined by Alex McIntyre. First of all, how are you doing today? And thanks so much for your time with this.
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to kind of do the same thing as Brooke and Heather.
Of course. So, just talk about like your relationship with the two of them, because as far as, Philadelphia goes, a lot of the Philadelphia market really is so close knit. And I've learned that from, being or going to college at Rider, which is like close to Philly. It's so close knit. I've heard from multiple different people. So can you just like touch on like the closeness of the Philadelphia media community?
Um, I feel like it's really close knit. Like you said, we're all kind of, it's hard to explain because while we all do our own thing, we also all kind of end up at the same place. So Heather and I both do Flyers and Phantoms. But I also break out into lacrosse. She does a lot of baseball.
Mhm.
But like together, between the two of us and probably a few other photographers, maybe two or three other photographers, we cover the whole Philadelphia sports scene. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like both of us are trying to get into NBA and NFL. So as soon as that happens, like literally the entire Philly sports scene is covered by Heather and myself. Um, it's very close knit, and I think Brooke's very into the hockey scene. I don't think she wants to leave there at all. I know that runs deep in her blood. Um,
Definitely.
but it's very close knit. We're kind of like a family.
Yeah, and it really does look like that too. And I wanted to just touch on it because women in sports is obviously a very big thing, and especially with National Women in Sports Day. I think was last month, the beginning of
It
last
was
month, right?
February 5th.
Yeah, February. It feels like so long ago already. Oh my God, it actually was a month ago. Today's March 5th. I just realized that today's March 5th. Wow. Okay. So really, what did that day really mean to you, or what does it mean to you?
um, so women in sports is obviously means a lot to me. It means a lot to every woman in sports. It's just something that um we like to take the recognition and realize that there are women in the field who can do the job just as well as a man can. There are some who do it better. There are some who don't do it as well. But there are women who are passionate about this line of work, and it comes a lot deeper than like a physical attraction to players. It like we are allowed to be fans. Fans can create this kind of career from a passion that they have for sports, and it's nice to kind of have a day to recognize that. Um,
Hmm.
I think in the grand scheme of things, women who work in sports, we don't want to be women in sports though. You know what I mean? We just want to work.
I do.
So that's where it kind of draws a line. But it is nice to have the recognition and to know that there are people who are allies for women who want to work in sports.
What do you think people can do, male or female, to really make those relations, I guess, better? Because I think when I was talking to Brooke, she was saying that like just to treat people better and just respect the work that women do. So, what in your eyes can really be done, I guess, in the immediate future or or in the near future, to really improve those relations and make women more validated?
So from a photography perspective, you can kind of like remove the person from the art. You know what I mean? I guess that could be from a written perspective also. But like, if you don't look at a photo or read a piece and say, wow, this was written by or created by a woman, like, I don't know why that changes anything. You know what I mean? If you
I do.
remove the person from the art and just appreciate what they were able to create, like, their gender really doesn't matter. And if you are just respectful, you want to see everyone succeed in the field, then it will. Sorry, Calvin's like jumping. He's biting my hand. It's just a mess. Um, but if you just like respect everyone that's around you, you remove the gender from everyone, and you treat everyone as an individual, then it's just kind of, it just happens naturally.
So you talked about branching out a lot more, maybe more so than Brooke does when the two of you were working together, and now you're into lacrosse. So what really made you want to do that, and what inspired you to really do lacrosse?
So I'm not sure if you follow NLL at all, but the Philadelphia Wings came back to Philly
Mhm.
last season. That was their first season back as an expansion team, and I was looking for any work I could get. I was starting new as a photographer. We got credentials for the Wings, and I was getting exponentially better with each game, and I
Mhm.
felt like I really connected with lacrosse. I connected really well with the NLL players, and one player was like, "Oh, do you plan to cover the Premier Lacrosse League?" And I had knew about the PLL because they reached out to me to borrow some of my photos of the Wings for graphic purposes
Okay.
because they were a brand new league. They had no photos of their players, anything like that.
Yeah.
So I knew about the PLL, and it was Justin Gutterding. He was like, "Do you plan on shooting the Premier Lacrosse League?" And I was like, I hadn't given it any thought. I know it's tour style. I won't be able to go to every single city all over the
Yeah.
place. Um, and then Blaze Reardon was like, "Oh, just slap that shit on a credit card." And I was like,
Oh,
"Okay." Um, and I actually ended up doing just that. And I did go to every single stop. Um,
really?
yeah, I went to every stop except for Los Angeles and Columbus, Ohio.
I think you had posted a picture on Twitter with like credentials. You were like holding them up. Was that it? What
That's what
you're
that was. Yeah.
talking
So
about?
I went to 14 different cities this summer.
This past summer alone.
Yeah.
Wow. What
Yeah.
was that whole experience like being, traveling the country for that long?
That was, it was amazing. There's no words for it really. Like, I was 21 years old having the summer of my life. I went to
Yeah.
Chicago, I went to Denver, and I was just creating all of the best possible lacrosse that I could. I went to two stops. I went to New York, and then I went to Boston. No, it was Boston and then New York. The third stop was Baltimore. And between New York and Baltimore, the PLL reached out to me and they were like, everything that you create is incredible and we would love for you to work for us.
Wow.
So I got picked up by the third week, which was pretty cool.
So are you working now on behalf of the PLL, that league?
So
Because I know
last
you're
I
team
did.
photographer for Riptide.
So last season I did. We're working to see what comes of this season. I reached out. I'm still kind of waiting to hear back, so it's up in the air, but I would love to do it again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, so really, how did you get into photography? Because so many people just say, like, yeah, they want to shoot sports and they will take whatever camera they have and then go to some sort of sporting event. How did you really get your start, and where does your passion come from?
So I think photography is like a passion I didn't know I had. Um,
Hmm.
so I think it was June of 2018 was Flyers development camp, and like all the rookies were there, and it was like the Phantoms come up, everyone that they just drafted comes up. They go to Voorhees, New Jersey, and Brooke and I live in South Jersey, and I had this little like camera. I think it was $300 from Walmart. Like,
Yeah.
I just went there and started to create what I could create, and just for the
Were
daily
you,
puck, like.
were you working for anybody at that time? Like, how did you get to go to that development camp?
So the thing with Flyers practices and everything, you can go in and you can take pictures wherever you want to. It's free. You don't need a credential. Um, just literally because it's like watching an open practice.
Sure.
So all of their practices are free and open to the public. If you bring a camera, like have at it, basically.
Really?
Yeah.
That's phenomenal practice then, and a
Yeah.
way really
I always encourage
in.
everyone to go there and shoot.
Mhm. So you saw Brooke there, and she. I know when I was talking to her, she had no idea you were really into hockey. Did you know she was into hockey as well?
So that is a little misconstrued. Brooke and I did not go to development camp together. We went to a practice together long before
Yes,
photography or writing even came about. Um,
yes, I misspoke.
it was playoffs, I think, in 2017-18. And I was like, I didn't know she was into hockey. We had both just been mutually tweeting on like personal accounts, and she was like, like, I wish I could like write about hockey, and I was like, why don't we write about hockey? Like, why not? And the rest is kind of history. Like, we went home and we brainstormed for, I think, like 5 hours to come up with a name, The Daily Puck. It took forever to come up with The Daily Puck. But
what other names did you try?
I knew she was into hockey just because she would tweet about it. I didn't know how far she ran and compared to how far my fandom kind of ran. And it was nice to kind of link up and rekindle like that from high school.
Yeah. Were you guys like close friends in high school at all, or?
We had a couple classes together. We we were very friendly in class together. Outside of class, no. Like, so I believe we had a gym class together. We would hang out during gym class, like walk together when we had to run the mile. If I saw her in the hallway, I would say hello. But like, she had her group, I had my group, and there were people that we both kind of grew up with. You know what I mean? So.
Absolutely. So you said like it took like 5 hours to come up with the Daily Puck. Like what were some of the things that, came up in that brainstorming process? Like talk about the other names that you had. Like what was your real focus when you were going to go create it?
So what we really wanted to do, we saw a lot of different, I feel like fan-owned blogs, podcasting, they're very popular in the hockey realm. They're all over the place. They pop up like little stores on the corner. They're everywhere. I think we wanted to see what everyone else was doing and just be different. You know what I mean? We didn't want to just walk in and create the same content as everyone else. And we really didn't want to beat the women in sports drum, but we did want to be a female-owned publication, female-ran, and that's kind of what we stuck to until we disassembled. When we were first planning things, I can't even remember names that were coming up. It's honestly, that day is like a blur because when we came up with the Daily Puck, we were like, yes, the Daily Puck, like yes, and then from that point, I couldn't tell you what other names. Like, we didn't come close to even considering anything.
Really?
Yeah, like there wasn't a maybe pile. There was just a complete, absolute no pile.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Daily Puck just went to the yes pile, and that was it.
So, what would you say is like your favorite sport to shoot? Is it hockey?
No, it's lacrosse.
No, it's lacrosse.
Yeah. Lacrosse, from experience, is the fastest game on 2 feet, and that includes hockey. It is, anything can change in the drop of a hat. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, like I got hit in the face by a lacrosse player. He got speared into me.
Is that like you like hit your nose or something?
Yes.
Do believe I've seen that.
So a player got speared into the boards, like by another player, and like right where I was at, and just completely smacked my face. And I didn't even see it coming. Everything happens in the blink of an eye. You have to be alert at all times, and I just was not. Lacrosse is just, there's so much room to create in lacrosse.
So how do you then like slow the game down, because your job as a photographer is to capture those, moments in time. How can you really slow the game down?
So I think I have a little bit of an advantage where lacrosse comes in, because I spend all year round shooting it. There are a lot of people who shoot lacrosse and have to wait for college to come back, which is like now. College lacrosse just started up, and then they do summer lacrosse, ends in September, and then they kind of have that whole winter where nothing's happening. I shoot lacrosse in the winter for the Riptide and the Wings, and then I shoot hockey, which kind of helps me maintain that speed. So I'm shooting fast games all year round. I'm constantly watching and shooting lacrosse, and studying the game, really kind of be able to predict what's going to happen makes it
Mm,
easier. Lacrosse is a lot harder to predict than hockey, but just really
mm,
studying the game and giving it all
definitely,
my focus is kind of the best place to start.
definitely. So, did you play any sports growing up at all?
I did, but nothing that was ever gonna take me to the WNBA. I played basketball. But I'm 5'2". I
Yeah.
played basketball. I played softball. Um, I might have dabbled in cheerleading, like nothing serious. My
Yeah.
biggest one was probably softball. I did
Mhm.
softball for a long time.
What position?
I was a pitcher. So I started at second base and then eventually was like, yeah, I want to be a pitcher. But second and third base were like my two primary ones.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I was wondering because you said you had known from when you said that lacrosse was your favorite sport to shoot. You had mentioned like that from I think you said it was like from experience. So I was like, oh, did you maybe play?
Oh no, I would just say lacrosse is my favorite to shoot just because I feel like I connect with it a lot more. I
Yeah.
connect with hockey, but I feel like when I'm shooting the game, I can't watch the game.
No,
Like
I understand.
so that's where I feel like I like lacrosse a lot more because it's easier to watch and it's easier to shoot at the same time.
Do you ever pinch yourself at all, like to say like, hey, like I'm actually here?
Okay, gotcha. So it's happened before. The first time it happened was um when I went to shoot my first Wings game and I was up in the press box. That was the first time I've ever been in the Wells Fargo press box. And
Yeah.
Calvin, he's like biting my shirt.
Oh my
Please
God.
bite this. Okay. So the first time I've ever been in the Wells Fargo press box, I walked up into the balcony and I just kind of looked down and I was like, wow, that's the whole turf. Like, that's
Yeah.
really happening right now. That is so exciting. And the second time it happened was when I first started PLL season. The first stop was in Boston.
Mm.
We went to Gillette Stadium.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I kind of walked in and I walked on the field and I was like, I am standing on the field at Gillette Stadium right now. Like,
A lot of history on that field,
yeah. So it
whether
was,
you're a fan of the team of the Patriots or not.
yeah. And I'm not, honestly. I hate the Patriots, but it was like a moment for me.
Who doesn't? But yeah, so that I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying. Like, you do pinch yourself a little bit, saying like, "Hey, I'm here." Like, that's such an amazing moment that you're able to really go do all of that.
Yeah.
Um, Now, more on like the photography side, what or like the sports photography side in general. What do you think are some misconceptions about the sports photography industry?
So the biggest one is probably that we walk in and we get free tickets and we sit there and we're able to watch the game. It's like if I go and shoot a Flyers game, you could not ask me to write a recap on what happened. I could tell you that
Mm,
they won. I could maybe tell you who scored based on my photos.
yeah.
Um, but I could not tell you what goes on. Um, my friends and family do not get free tickets out of me.
Hmm.
um, and it's not a glamorous lifestyle where I walk in and I take photos and the players ask me for photos and then they want to hang out and get beers. Like, I don't know them. They're the subjects that I shoot outside of the game. I don't interact with any of them. I think there's a really big misconception where everyone who works in sports is like friends with the athletes and whatever. In my opinion, it's kind of crossing a line.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest misconception is just that it's a glamorous lifestyle because it's not.
What are some of the hardships then that people might not say?
So something that I didn't know when I first started photography is most photographers have a day job.
Hmm.
Um, so I work overnight in an emergency room. Sometimes I do day stuff. Like today, I only work from 7 to 11:30. It's not too bad. Um, but I didn't realize that to do that, I was gonna have to work a whole other job. So I work full time. on top of it.
On top of photography.
Yeah. On top of I cover 5 teams this season.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you're in the hospital, just trying to, support yourself too, because you need money.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's kind of like whenever I'm not shooting, I'm at the E-Day, and it's
You're at
hard
the
to I said the E-Day, that's just like the department. I'm in the emergency room.
okay.
But it's hard to balance things. Like just last weekend with the PWHPA, the Dream Gap Tour, was in
Sure.
Voorhees. So on Friday I went to Long Island to shoot a Riptide game.
Yeah.
I came home and edited my photos. Woke up, I slept for maybe like 4 or 5 hours. Woke up,
Wow.
I shot 2 Dream Gap Tour games. Came back to where I live to work, and I worked an overnight shift. And before I went back to sleep, I shot 2 more games the next day.
Wow.
It's busy and it's hard. It's not an easy life.
That must really like take a toll on like your body and like your mind too.
It definitely takes a toll on me, and my friends are like Heather or Brooke will tell you this. I never give myself a break. And
Mm.
they're like, you need to take care of yourself. I recently experienced a really bad burnout, and I missed out on something I did not want to miss out on, which stinks. So it definitely reminds you that you have to care for yourself.
Do you mind like do you mind like touching on like what that burnout really was at all?
Um,
If you don't want to get into it, like
no,
don't.
I totally can. There's a lot of times when I work 7 days straight, and that'll go on for weeks on end. There was a point this summer when I was looking at my mom was like, "Oh, are you gonna come to the shore for the week like in August?" And I was looking at my calendar and I was like, "Wow, I really haven't been off since May 19th." Like
Wow.
I go a really long time without giving myself a break, which is terrible.
Mhm.
Um, Now he's gonna do this, but um, I took a really long time to kind of establish this career. There's days where there are games happening, and I just I don't really give myself a break. Like I'll see that there's a game happening, and I'm like, well, if I'm not there, then I'm giving someone the opportunity to create something that like better than what I can create because I'm
Yeah.
not there. And that's just the way I see it. It's really tough on me, and I just feel like in order to succeed in this field, you kind of have to grind your way out.
I
Um,
do.
but I definitely have to give myself more time because 7 days a week going months on end is not good for you at
Yeah.
all.
So what are some of the things that you do to really, give yourself that break then?
So I did change jobs. So now that I work in the emergency room, it's actually a little easier. Last summer I was working Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. And then I was
Mm.
leaving when I got done on Friday. I was leaving for a premier lacrosse weekend, and then I would land like at 6 a.m. Monday morning and go to work by 8. So
Wow.
I was not giving myself any time at all. And then I would take the time that I was done at work to edit all of my photos from the weekend prior. I wasn't giving myself any free time at all.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I work in the emergency room, there's a lot of times when I work like a 4-hour shift, and then that's easy. I have a little bit of time to kind of de-stress. Um, there's days when I work a 12-hour overnight shift, and then I just come home and I'm able to sleep and relax, and that's it.
Yeah.
My boss, thankfully, is really good with my photography schedule. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of give myself breaks. Like
Well,
when I
that's
do
good.
for my photography schedule, I kind of leave days out so I can just have a day off completely.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that's worked to your benefit, right?
That is working a lot better for me. It's definitely helping out. Originally I was full time, which I still work full time hours, but originally I was full time at the hospital. My boss like just kind of had to schedule me wherever she could. I was missing a lot of shoots. So I switched statuses so that I could pick my schedule, and now things are settling in and everything's like comfortable.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's, I guess, reflected maybe in, because a lot of times people say like, once you take that step back, you could take a few steps forward. Has like having those breaks really reflected in your work then?
I think so. So with the way that the box lacrosse schedule works, NLL, there's like weeks at a time where I don't have a game to shoot.
Mm,
The New York Riptide, their last home game was January 25th, I believe, and
wow.
then they didn't have a game until February 22nd. Or no,
Wow,
February
that's
28th.
time.
Yeah, so I kind of had a whole month away from lacrosse, and when you kind of take breaks like that and give yourself time, then you see that shoot coming up and you're like, all right, like I can't wait to create now. Like I'm really excited. I'm invested in this. So
Mm-hmm.
I think
And
when you create that excitement, you kind of push that into your work.
when you and I had interacted at the Wells Fargo Center, you said, I think you were there for Philly Sports Network, right?
Yes, and Underground Sports Philadelphia.
Okay. Now, just talk to me how, like, really you got involved with those two, because I know with Liam, he's in England, has never met anybody, but I know the culture from him talking to me and everything is really so vibrant and everything else too. How did you really get involved with him?
So Kyle is a friend of mine. Him and Brooke met at a Sixers game, and she was like, "Hey, like, there's this guy. He runs a blog for Philly sports. He wants us to be a part of it. That's Underground Sports Philadelphia."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we were like, okay. Like Brooke was featured on his podcast a couple times. Like she became, I think, a rotating like a guest. She was there like every Wednesday or something. Um,
Yeah.
and then I just kind of cover all of his photography needs. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then, excuse me. Um, so with Liam, it's actually a really funny story. Um, I was like, I noticed some of the photos that they were using
Mm-hmm.
may have been taken from the internet, which is like illegal. And so I messaged Liam Liam was the first, or Philly Sports Network was the first blog that I worked for.
Mm-hmm.
I messaged Liam on Twitter and I was like, "Hey Liam, my name's Alex McIntyre. I'm a Philly-based sports photographer. I'm brand new at this. I don't work for anyone. I noticed that you may have been using photos from the internet. That's illegal." I was like, "You could use a photographer. I could use the access. Like,
Yeah.
how can we do this?" And he was like, okay, I'm not doing anything illegal. Like, I promise you, I get my photos from from a reliable source. And he was like, but like, I'll take you on. And I was like, all right, bet.
Okay.
But
And
that's what
it's
happened with that.
yeah, and it's worked out for the best, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm very good friends with Liam now, and we laugh about it to this day that I tried to
Sure.
blackmail him into hiring me. So
Sure. I mean, I've never heard, you never really hear any stories of somebody blackmailing others into hiring, but you know,
listen, you gotta shoot your shot.
yeah, no, definitely. And it's worked.
All of the jobs that I have right now, my photography jobs, I got from shooting my shot.
Really.
Yeah. So the New York Riptide, we were at the NLL draft last September, and they had the first overall pick. I took a photo of him, and they shared it on their social media. And I was like, that's my photo. Like, so I
Yeah.
messaged them, and I was like, do you guys have a photographer? And their social media person was like, no, we don't. And I was like, do you want one? And she was like, yeah.
Shoot,
Um,
Owen.
So we went through like the interview process and everything, and she was like, "Yeah, like we'd love to work with you."
Sure.
So always shoot your shot.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, it's interesting you mentioned that, like, people like using your photos. I want to just talk about, like, because I do think it is very important. Like photo credit. I hear, and see people on Twitter, like, Heather talks about it a lot. Like, if somebody's using her photos and, with you as well, if you ever talk about it, like, what's like the proper way to credit someone for someone who might not know?
So there's really no proper way to credit someone, but just make sure you're doing it. No matter how you do it, just make sure you're doing it. You know what I mean? If someone, and I can speak for myself and Heather on this, I
Of
don't care
course.
if you use my photos. We don't care. Um, if you're just sharing one of our photos, neither of us mind. Tag us, like literally just tag us in the photo. Camera
Mhm.
emoji at Heatherberry images, Alex McIntyre photos, whoever, like,
Yeah.
just make sure that the people know where that photo came from. Now, if you're using my photo to make money off of me, if you're using my photo for any marketing reasons, that needs to be discussed with me.
Yeah.
Because I should be making a portion of that. That's my photo.
Of course.
But when it comes to people on like Twitter just sharing one of my photos, all I ask is that you tag me in the photo.
Absolutely.
I've explained this. I've expressed this to like even some of the athletes that I take photos of. If you're gonna share my photo, you're sharing it to thousands of fans.
Yeah.
One of them could need a photographer. And if you share my photo and you tag me in it, you're helping me get jobs. Like, if someone sees a photo and they're like, wow, like, that's a great photo. I'd love to work with that photographer. Now they know where to go.
Yeah.
So that's, like, the biggest thing to me. Is, like, you crediting me for my work essentially helps me continue to do what I love.
Have you ever had any issues with, crediting that got maybe a little out of hand?
Not really, because I would normally come in from the top rope, which is really aggressive. But if I see people using my photos, I just like reply and I'm like, hey, like, where do you want me to send the invoice for my work? And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, you're using my work like without my consent. I need to make money off of that. So like, how much, or where can I like email the invoice to? And they're like, oh my God, like, can I just tag you? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. But you should have done that to begin with. Like, so a lot of people respond really well when they have to fork over money. So I'm just like, yeah, where would you like me to send the invoice for using my work? And then they're like, okay, what can we do to fix this?
Yeah, because you're basically putting them in a corner because they know they maybe should have, and they should have, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not at this point, like, we can't be nice anymore. We can't say, please credit me. Like, please make sure you're crediting me. Like, it just needs to be a firm, you have to credit the photographer.
Yeah. Because this is your lifestyle. This is your work that you are putting a lot of hours into.
And like I said earlier, a lot of photographers have to work a full-time job. Like, if people would continue to credit us, if people were more willing to pay creatives, like that would not be the case. But right now it is. And a lot of photographers are working to end that. And I consider myself part of that.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to you that, that you are really part of that then? I'm sure it's very gratifying to be part of, well, at least now because of like the social media age and everything else, I'm sure it's really gratifying to know that you are playing a role in some of this.
Um, it's definitely gratifying. I think, like when I did that shoot for the Mike Scott app, a lot of people were like, make sure you're crediting Alex for these photos. Like, I was one of two photographers there. If the photo was shot for Mike's app, it was my photo. You knew who to credit. You know what I mean? So it's definitely gratifying to see everyone like kind of jump on the bandwagon and say like, hey, make sure you're crediting Alex. Hey, make sure you're crediting the photographer. It's nice to see that people are recognizing that that's important.
What would what would you say is like your best memory as a sports photographer?
Like an event that I shot or just anything in general?
Anything in general, really. Like,
Ooh.
what's your best, or like, what's your most memorable moment as a photographer? I know it's probably very hard to choose.
It's definitely hard, but I do have one moment.
Okay.
So in September, it was kind of a crossover between PLL and NLL. Um, the PLL was coming to Philly for the championship, and the NLL draft was in Philly. The NLL headquarters is in Philly, but the
Mm.
draft was happening at Xfinity Live. Um, we were a week away from the championship. Like, I think it was that week. And the draft was on a Tuesday. The championship was that Saturday. And I was coming from Jersey. I'm crossing the bridge to go take photos at the NLL draft. And there's a PLL billboard advertising the championship with my photo on it.
No way.
Yeah, and I fell apart. I called the
So
people that
you're
I was going to
dri-
meet, huh?
were you like driving and you like saw this?
I was driving. I pulled over like on the Walt Whitman Bridge. Like my photo was on the Walt Whitman Bridge. Like
That's ridiculous.
yeah, and it was. I can send you the photo also if you want to put it in the article.
That- That'd be very cool.
Yeah, for sure. It was incredible. It was like Miles Jones. He's one of the biggest lacrosse names out there.
Mm,
I caught him in Denver, like full on, just like screaming. And that was the photo. And I was like,
wow. And that was on a bridge or a
yeah,
billboard.
on the Walt Whitman. It was on a billboard crossing the Walt Whitman Bridge on 76.
That's ridiculous.
I was
What
like,
was like?
that was
Did
everything
they
started
credit
rushing through
you
my
for
head at that moment. What?
Did they credit you for it? First of all.
We're not going to talk about that. But I knew it
Oh,
was my photo. um, it's hard because I was technically working for the PLL, so they owned the photo really. But
okay. So if
um,
you're working on behalf of them, they own the rights to it,
yeah,
basically.
so like if I was shooting for the NHL or if I was shooting for the like MLB or whatever, I wouldn't expect the photo credit just because I'm shooting it for that purpose. Like if you want to
Gotcha.
know who the photos belong to, just look up who the team photographer is.
So when you say like you're the team photographer for the New York Riptide, the Riptide own your photos, but you are specifically are the team photographer for them.
I'm the only team photographer. It's different with the Riptide because I'm contracted for freelance work, so I still own my photos. Um,
Okay.
they give me photo cred, but it's not expected with them.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Um, but so I was crossing the bridge and I saw that photo and like my heart literally stopped. Um,
Yeah.
the first thing that came to mind is like when I was a kid, I was like from when I was like 6 years old. I moved to Jersey when I was like 6, and my grandparents still lived in the city. We would go there every Friday because my grandparent or my grandpa would have like pool night, so my dad would play pool every Friday. We would
In
go to this
Philly.
in Philly, yeah. Um,
Mhm.
my grandpa's basement on 8th and Reed, but um, we would go to the city, and I just remember driving across the Walt Whitman Bridge and seeing billboard, 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 coming home and seeing billboard, 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 and like I was, I don't know, 15 years later crossing the bridge and like my
Your
photo.
work.
I like it was definitely a moment.
That seems so just amazing that it's your photo on a billboard.
I cried. I got to the NLL draft and I was like sobbing, like crying real tears.
Oh my God.
It
That must have been such an amazing moment.
was. It was.
All right, Alex, I really, really appreciate your time with this. It means so much to me that, you're able to come on and share your story, and I'm really excited to share it to the world too.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.